Once upon a time, there was a young girl, the only daughter of her mother. She was a lovely girl. She always obeyed her mother, or at least she tried to. She was always polite to those who greeted her, and always curtsied in reply. She kept her room tidy and didn't get her best clothes dirty. One day, the girl went for a walk in the forest, alone. She didn't really mean to spend so much time there, but when she looked up from the frogs jumping in and out of the many ponds, the sun was setting. The girl hurried back home, but the path which she thought she knew well had changed. She became lost. Being a sensible girl, and knowing that her mother would come looking for her before long, the girl stopped as soon as she realized she was lost. She sat down beneath the flowing branches of a willow tree and tried to keep herself warm. She was troubled, but did not cry, for she was a brave girl too. But she wished fervently that she hadn't come into the forest that day. Then there arose, from one of the ponds, a naiad. Wordlessly, invitingly, she held out her hand to the girl. The girl said nothing in reply, and was afraid to accept the invitation, for she had heard many warnings about strangers, and in particular, about the strangers of the wood, who came out after the sun set, and in the end, she did not accept the invitation of the naiad. Disappointed, the naiad sank back into her pond. Not long after, the girl saw a lantern floating between the trees, and heard her mother's voice anxiously calling her name. The girl cried out with joy, and rushed towards the light. Her mother saw her, dropped the lantern, and embraced her. They returned home, overjoyed to be reunited. The next morning, the girl told her mother of the strange woman in the water. Her mother was sad when she heard it, but would not tell her daughter why. She only said that she hoped that they could both stay out of the forest from then on. The daughter was glad to obey, for remember, she was an obedient girl. It was through no fault of her own when she again entered the forest. Another day, as the sun set, she and her mother were returning from the village. They were returning by stagecoach. The driver of the stagecoach, however, had misunderstood what the girl's mother had said, and did not stop when he had reached their home. He instead passed it by, and carried on his usual path through the forest. Both the girl and her mother were sleeping, for their day had been long, and they were exhausted. When they awoke, the carriage had come to a stop. It was the morning, so they left it. Wondering why it had stopped, they found that both the driver and his horses had disappeared. Indeed, they found that the path itself had disappeared. The carriage was sitting quite neatly in a clearing just its size, and around the clearing the mysterious forest stretched as far as they could see. The sun shone bright on the trees. The girl's mother sighed and began walking in a random direction. The girl followed close behind. Together they walked on and on through the forest, the wind whispering just above them, the frogs croaking in the ponds by their feet. The forest seemed like it was breathing. The girl asked her mother where they were going. Her mother replied that she didn't know. The girl began to feel afraid, but eventually decided that so long as she had her mother, she would be fine. "I'm scared, little one," said the girl's mother. "Don't be," said the girl. "The forest is pretty." They spoke no more, but continued walking. The girl thought she could hear the faint sound of music in the distance. Her mother's ears heard only the calls of dangerous beasts. They walked on and on, but the forest seemed to have no end, nor did they appear to have gone far from where they started. It was hard to tell if that had even gone anywhere. "The forest is beginning to wear me down," said the girl's mother, who walked with a weary stoop. "Why?" asked the girl. "Perhaps it's best if you don't worry about the things I have to worry about," said the girl's mother, smiling sadly. "I know too much about this forest." "At least we're together," said the girl. She raised her arms and let the gentle wind flow through her hair, smiling happily. "Shall we keep walking?" "So we shall," said her mother. "How long do you think we've been walking?" "I've lost track of time, Mother," said the girl. "I feel like I could walk forever in this forest and never grow weary of it." "Do you think it goes on forever? Do you think we'll meet anyone along the way?" "So many questions you ask, child," said her mother. Perhaps you'll get answers if you look for them along the way, but I do not think I could bear to answer you myself." "That's all right," said the girl. "Let's just keep walking then." Mother and daughter kept walking. Occasionally, the girl would find an interesting rock to show her mother, or catch a frog to play with. Her mother would stop when she stopped, and go on when she went on. But the further they went on, and they did seem to go on for a very long time indeed, the slower and slower she walked. The girl was fine with that. She was able to stay long enough in one place to teach a frog how to do a cartwheel. Eventually, though, her mother stopped walking altogether and sat down, leaning her back against a tree. "I'm too tired to go on," she said. "Then we can stay here until you feel better," said the girl. She spotted a frog that was yellow instead of green and waded into the pond to catch it. She caught it. She was getting rather good at catching frogs. She came and showed it to her mother. It was polite enough to croak out a greeting, but then the girl noticed that her mother had closed her eyes soon after opening them to gaze upon the frog, and that there were pale white streaks in her mother's hair. She set the frog down. "What is it, Mother?" she asked. "Are you ill?" "I don't think so," said her mother. I just don't feel as though I have the strength to go on towards home. Like I'll never get home at all. As though the world and all its woe is set against me, and against those whom I love, as there's no purpose to walking onward." The girl sat by her mother and stroked her anxious cheek. She said nothing, only sat there and watched her mother and the frogs, and the leaves which stirred in the wind. Her mother shivered. Her gray hairs increased in number. "Should I go look for someone who can help you?" asked the girl. "The water lady might be somewhere around here. If I looked long and far enough, I might be able to find her." "No," whispered her mother, opening her eyes. "Please, stay with me. Don't leave. Don't wander away. If you wander away, will you ever come back?" "Of course I'll come back, Mother," said the girl. She stood up, unlike her mother. She seemed to have grown younger during the time they had spent in the forest, and yet her eyes had an old, thoughtful look to them. They shone brightly from her youthful, childish face. "Don't go," said her mother. "I promise I'll come back," said the girl. "I'll train you a frog to keep you company while I'm away, if you want. You can name it after me, or you can name it something a little more froggy. Whatever seems appropriate at the time. But I have to go, Mother. You need help, and I can get it for you." She fell silent. Her mother didn't reply, and only lay upon the grassy hill, equally silent. So the girl caught another frog. She trained it to sit still, and then set it by her mother, where it sat still and croaked occasionally. "Must you really go?" asked her mother. "I won't be gone forever," said the girl. "But yes, I must go for your sake." "Then," her mother sighed, "tell me a story. Keep telling it to me till I fall asleep, my child. Then go, where I can't see you leave me." The girl was silent a moment, and then related the story which you have just heard. Their story, her story. Her mother's rest seemed a little easier as she finished. "Tell it again," her mother whispered, drowsily, peacefully. "I will," said the girl. And so she began the tale anew, saying thus.